CRA arrears, property tax arrears, owes money to the water company. He's got a maxed out credit card, but he's got $5,000 in savings. Who lets their property taxes get behind by $17,000? Sometimes the best behavior from a borrower who's had trouble comes in the worst moments.
He made every payment on time. He had investors from as little as $50,000 into this loan to $157,000.
Nick, you're a rich guy. You got $354,000 lying around somewhere, I'm sure. So I come to you and I tell you, I got a guy who needs $354,000. He's got CRA arrears. He's got property tax arrears. He's got owes money to the water company. He's got a maxed out credit card, but he's got $5,000 in savings as well. How do you feel about this so far?
I don't feel good, but I'm getting better with these. So, okay, let's start with the collateral.
Well, I'm curious. So is it, so do you buy, so are you learning from these that like you just bypass these facts at first? Like if what are you learning from this series? Like, are you saying the first step is just look at the collateral?
Yeah, I'm gonna go straight to the collateral, then income, and just sort of start building relationships with these numbers.
Okay. What I like about this is that you're not as afraid as you were when we started doing these. Like when I started showing you this stuff, at first you were like, whoa, like this is this is insane. There's no way around. I think now you're gaining an appreciation for the fact that it's not about what the problems are. We just assume there's problems. It's about whether they're fixable or not, and whether or not, if we believe they're fixable and we're wrong, can the collateral set us free? Go to the next slide, because that's what we're going to talk about on the next slide.
Yeah, like what's the structure? What's the strategy? What's the
Yeah.
plan?
Yeah, we can all agree this is a mess. Like
Yeah.
at first glance, it's a mess, but they're all some form of messy. It's a matter of, what can be fixed and what can't. Go to the next slide. Okay. So remember, and I want to say this, I think every single time, it's like it could be easy to give up right at the beginning, because you look at that sort of dog's breakfast of facts, right? The fact is, $17,000 in property tax arrears. Immediately you could judge the borrower and just be like, well, who lets their property taxes get behind by $17,000? That on a property that's worth, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $450, maybe $500,000. You can kind of make those quick math adjustments in your head real quick and be like, I'm not lending to this person. Or you could say, oh, income tax arrears for the CRA, $7,000. No, I'm not doing that. And there are a lot of lenders out there who'd be like, CRA arrears, I'm not touching them. Income tax or property tax arrears, I'm not touching them. But they're missing opportunities, because the reality is that sometimes the best behavior from a borrower who's had trouble comes in the worst moments, right? When they're right at the edge of having to give up the property that they work so hard to get, and then they come to us and we provide a solution for them. If it can fix everything, you might get the best behavior from that borrower going forward. But you're not wrong. The first thing we have to look at as lenders is, okay, is there a viable solution that we could actually clean all this up? If there is a solution, are the payments going to be sustainable for long enough for us to execute on the solution? And if we're wrong, or things change and the borrower doesn't do the right things or whatnot, can the collateral be the solution, right? In the worst case scenario, can it be the solution? So typically, in this case, we're looking at $443,000 of collateral. That's what the property appraised for. And if you missed it on the last slide, you'll get it on the next slide. The application here was for 80% of the value, which is so common. Jeff can tell you, we tell people the guideline is maximum 80%. Guess what everybody applies for, right? Everybody applies for 80%, which is kind of backwards if you think about it, because if you're a borrower, what's your biggest concern when you go into private? It's cost. And so you would think that the mentality is, I want to borrow as little as possible, because I'm going to have to pay fees and interest on everything I borrow. But that's really not what we see. What we see more often is people applying for the maximum because it feels better. It's like, if I get 80%, I can clean everything up, pay everything off, and feel better. Even though it's costing me more money, then it's up to us to sort of sort out what they want and what is actually needed to execute a solution. So in this case, we have collateral of 443,000 to work with. We would prefer to be 70 to 75% leveraged, not 80% leveraged. And I'll get to that in more detail in a minute. And here we have is the ability to pay strong? Well, you got $80,000 of income here, but it's self-employed income. It's not verifiable. And $80,000 doesn't go a tremendous length. And after taxes and whatnot, you have to look at what the net income is and then just do a very reasonable sort of common sense calculation. Say, well, if this person's bringing home, $5,000 a month and the mortgage payment is $4,000 a month, it can be pretty tough for anybody to live comfortably on $1,000 a month after they pay their mortgage. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So it's not about what's wrong. It's about what can be fixed. Let's look at the next slide. Got to be willing to do the digging. Okay. And the first step to doing the digging is assessing everything in an organized fashion. So on slide 1, you saw a whole bunch of bullets, a whole bunch of facts. For the first time viewer, it's very scary. You look at it and go, I can't even believe I'm talking about investing money in a mortgage with a guy or a girl who looks like this on paper. But when we kind of organize everything and lay it all out, and this takes 10 or 15 minutes to do, here's what we got. We got a bungalow in Thunder Bay. Now, some people right off the hop can be like, Thunder Bay, I don't want to lend in Thunder Bay. I don't know why. The same rules apply up there as anywhere else. If there's a market for the property, people live in Thunder Bay and live their whole lives there and trade properties up there just like they do in the GTA. So we've got an appraised value of 443. The first thing we want to do is make sure we believe or trust that value. We'll get to more of that on the next slide. We got a loan request of 80% of the appraised value, which is $354,400. We have a self-employed borrower making $80,000 unverified. We've got a credit score of 571, which is the biggest problem here. And then we have, believe it or not, that's a bigger problem than what's in the right-hand bottom corner. The debts, those look like the biggest problem, but we're not doing anything here unless those can be looked after. So they're not really a problem. We're either going to be able to look after them or we're not. If we're not, we're not going to do the deal. If we are, they are no longer a problem. But the credit is a problem if the exit strategy is a refinance, which in this case it is, because we need that score to go up. If that score doesn't go up, it's going to be hard for the broker to refinance them back to a bank. So we've got a first mortgage of $276,000. We've got a credit card of $14,000. We've got taxes and utilities of $17,000. We got CRA of $7,600. Yes, it all looks bad. But the question is, can we clean it all up? And if we clean it all up, can we offer a mortgage that has a payment that's manageable with an $80,000 a year income? And if that's true, and we feel like those payments are sustainable and we can clean it all up and the exit strategy makes sense, then we have to ask ourselves, are we comfortable enough with the collateral that if it all goes wrong or things don't go the way they're supposed to, or we've made a mistake in our assessment, that the collateral can set us free, to your point. Let's go to the next slide. So we start trying to verify everything, okay? First thing we do is verify the property, obviously. We get an appraisal, it's $443,000. On properties that are in this value range, an appraisal is usually pretty good because you've got a lot of properties in this value range. So you usually have a lot of comparables. The comparables are recent. The appraisal can be really highly dependent on. You don't need any additional layers of valuation risk mitigation. But if we were talking about a property, let's say in the $1 million range or higher, where we're getting into a lower amount of inventory, less sales in the market every month, then you may want to do an additional layer of due diligence here and send a local real estate agent who works in that area, has listings in that area, is familiar with the buying activity in that area in to do an opinion of value. Does that make sense? And you'd
Yep.
layer it on, right? You'd look at the appraisal, you'd look at the opinion, and you'd see how far apart they are.
Yep. Makes sense.
Okay. Loan request is 354.4, 80% LTV, and you've got that credit score of 571. That's not going to really fly for us. To get to 80% loan to value, and let me talk about little bit about LTV here. Our comfort level is the lowest LTV possible. Our average loan is 70%, but we're happy to be at 75% because of two things. They're very logic driven. If you go to a bank, you can get a mortgage up to 80% of the value without insurance. If you apply for more than 80%, so if you go to buy a property and you only have 10% down, the bank will force you to get insurance. You have to get approved by the insurer before you get approved by the bank. There's a reason for that. Banks spend millions of dollars doing statistical research to determine their risks. And the fact that all the banks agree that insurance needs to be added above 80% loan to value tells you that's the safety threshold. Now, when you sell a property, you're going to incur 5% in real estate costs right off the hop. You have to assume that. So, in order to preserve a 20% buffer and account for real estate fees, our comfort level, our favorite place to be is 75% or less. Now, when we'll go to 80% is when we have a borrower who has a track record of meeting their credit obligations. So when you have someone with a 600 plus, 700 plus beacon score, when you have someone who's never had any real missed payments or any of that, but just has overutilization, you can justify lending them a little bit more because you can rely on them to make payments even if valuation comes down. So if your value drops, you're more reliant on the borrower to get you through that period, because what we know is real estate is fairly cyclical. What goes down typically comes back up over time. And so you need to feel good that the borrower can sustain the payments longer. We know this to be true. When value drops, people don't come down from their bedrooms at night and talk about, oh, the value of my house dropped, so I'm not going to make my mortgage payment. Those two things aren't correlated. People continue to make their mortgage payment even when the value drops. So we just want to be sure that when we're lending to somebody, if we're going above 75%, that we're doing it with a borrower has better credit profile. In this case, 571, this person's had some trouble. Obviously, you look at the right, CRA problems, taxes, utilities, all of these are indicators that this person has had a difficult time managing money to this point. Now, it may be a series of things that happened that created circumstances that made it difficult. One thing led to another. And if we clean it all up, maybe the behavior is going to be different. And usually we can tell that by looking at the credit bureau, because you can see that the problems all started in one period of time, like COVID, for example. Someone lost their job and all of a sudden things started to struggle. But before that, remember how people get into a house is that they have to save some money. They have to make a significant down payment. By the time they come to us, they've built 30 or 40% equity in their house. So they've done some things right, just something's gone wrong. So in this case, we don't necessarily want to go above 75% if we don't have to, but we were able to verify what the credit looked like. Why are they in this position? How did they end up with income tax arrears? How did they end up with property tax arrears? And so on and so forth. You can just see patterns when you look at the credit. So we verify all of this. Now we have a clear picture of the situation we can build a solution or a potential solution from. Now, in this case, we thought we had a clear picture. We did not evidently have a clear picture at this point. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you what we did based on what we thought. So we started building the solution. We looked at can we get rid of all of the problems with 70% loan to value? That's where we want to be. So forget what the borrower asked for. Would 70% be enough? $310,000. Can we pay out the mortgage? Yes. Can we pay out the CRA? Yes. Can we pay out the taxes and utilities and the credit card? No. Don't forget there's fees, there's legal fees, there's broker fees, there's lender fees. So there's just not enough money. Very easy calculation. You're trying to pay out 276 plus 17 plus 6 plus 14. You're looking at, what's that, 31, 38, and 76. So you're looking at like 314 before you even pay out fees. So it's just not enough. So you got to go up. So then we pressure test 75%. So if we go 75%, we get 332,000. Everything works. There's enough money to pay the fees, pay the legal and closing costs, get rid of the first mortgage, the CRA, the taxes, the credit card. And we look at that and we go, well, now we talk to the broker and we go, if the picture is that you're at 75% loan to value and all of these things are gone, what happens to the credit? And we know the credit will improve for sure, likely up above 600 within 12 months, which now opens up opportunities for refinance for the broker to go to a whole new class of banks, the B level banks. If the credit improves even more and gets into that high 600s, may even open up some options with an A level bank. And you've got 75% loan to value, you know the banks will do up to 80, which means there's still room for them to cap their own fees and provide a solution. So you're opening up all kinds of exit strategy doors here on the refinance by keeping the loan to value in private at 75% and leaving that additional buffer. It's just another reason why we'd like to stay as low as possible. It keeps more refinance options available. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. So we get to this stage, we're like, this is a winner. This is a great solution. We can pay out everything. It's fantastic. Let's go forward. So what do? We generate a commitment. We get investors ready to go. We're all set. And then the statement for the first mortgage payout comes and it's $29,000 higher than what was disclosed on the application. So instead of a payout of 276,000, we've got a payout of 305,000. I can tell you this is the moment where we get irritated because immediately we're thinking there's no way the borrower didn't know that their payout was 305,000. Is there? And so we dig in, we start asking questions. Well, what's the reason? So we look at the detailed statement of payout from the borrower's lawyer and we notice there's 215 days of unpaid interest on the existing mortgage. So now you're not just dealing with CRA arrears, you're not just dealing with income tax or property tax arrears and utilities arrears, you're also dealing with first mortgage arrears. So what was the problem here? The good news is it indicates that it's all a cluster of problems in one period of time. So remember what I said, it's like if you can clean it all up, you can justify that someone had something happen in their world that threw everything off the rails. Now, they should have disclosed this to us. And I didn't get the sense at the time, and neither did Lori, who underwrote this file, that they were intentionally hiding it from us. I just don't think they realized, like they hadn't accounted for the interest they hadn't paid. They had accounted for what they knew the principal of the loan was at that time, but they hadn't accounted for the fact, and they hadn't disclosed to us that they hadn't made a mortgage payment in several months. Oftentimes, borrowers do this because they're assuming the broker or the new mortgage is going to clean everything up, which is the right assumption, but there was a lack of disclosure here. So when you get 215 days of unpaid interest plus a $7,000 penalty for being in arrears that long from the first mortgage, now you've got $22,000 more to pay out. And at the end of the day, we end up with an $18,000 shortfall because we had built in a little extra money. 332,000, 75% loan to value was enough to pay everything out with still a little bit left over. Now that's all eaten up and we're short $18,000. So what would you do, Nick, here?
See if we can dig into the equity a bit more, or
There's really only two options.
yeah.
The two options are you increase the loan amount right? So you go from 75% loan to value, done all the work at this point, right? So you feel vested in this. This is what happens to private lenders is you've done all the work. You've spent a week on this. You've gone back and forth. You collected all the due diligence. You've done everything. Now you got a shortfall of 18,000. And the question in your head is, do I really want to lose this deal for $18,000? Maybe I should just lend him 350 like he asked. But we did not do that. We chose option number 2, which was, he said, look, we're happy to clean up the mess we knew about. The mess we didn't know about, you got to clean it up. So if you come up with the $18,000, we'll still give you the 332. We'll still pay out what we said we were going to. We'll still cover everything, clean it all up, and we'll feel good at 75%. Given the fact that we didn't know about this additional shortfall, and you have a 571 beacon score, and we were already only comfortable at 75%, I'm not more comfortable going to 77 or 78 or 79 or 80% now that I know this additional information. So we put it back on the borrower, and we were willing to walk away, right? So now you're going to find out how badly the borrower wants to clean their own situation up and how invested they are and how resourceful they are in coming up with being part of the solution. And that's what we did. So let's go to the next slide.
Wait a minute. So this opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Can you just push back on any deal and be like, hey, pull 20K out of your TFSA, pull 30K out of your RSPs, liquidate this, liquidate that, and we can make this work? Is that like a common counter?
Yeah. I mean, our job is to assess what we're comfortable with, not stretch to accommodate the borrowers. We're not in the accommodation business. We're in the cleanup business, remediation business. So we look at what we're comfortable with, what's realistic. The borrower's always going to say, "Oh, just lend me the extra 18,000. I'm going to pay it back. Don't worry." That's not how we work. We got to look at what we know to be true about typical borrower behavior. And remember, what you said at the very beginning of this was number one thing, look at the collateral. If we get it all wrong, where are we comfortable? We're comfortable here at 75%. If that means we can do almost everything you need, but now there's a shortfall of 18,000, well, 18,000 isn't 332. It's 18,000. Maybe your father or your mother or your brother or your sister or your friend can lend you the 18,000 and you can work out a plan with them on the 18,000. But we're going to secure your house for 332,000, and if you can come up with the balance to make this whole thing work, then you got yourself a deal. But you got to do something too. Especially in a situation like this where we got to the 1 yard line, and then you hit us with, oh, by the way, that first mortgage I put on the application at 276 is actually 305 to pay out. Okay, well, and this brings up such a big key to being successful as lenders. You have to be willing to walk away. You have to go into it knowing every 10 applications I see, probably 8 of them are going to fall apart, maybe 9. And be okay with that. So when you're evaluating, you're looking at it and you're saying, what am I comfortable doing? And that's my line in the sand. Not willing to go any higher than that. This is where I feel safe. I don't feel safe on the other side. It's like if you think of yourself on a cliff, edge of a cliff, and someone goes, where do you feel safe? And you go, well, I feel safe with both feet on this side, solid ground. And someone goes, well, what if you just went 1 foot off the cliff? And you'd be like, no, I don't feel safe. Like, I don't feel safe there. I feel safe here. In fact, there's part of me here that wants to be on my knees instead of standing up here on the edge of the cliff. So I want to be back from the cliff if I could, maybe an extra 4 or 5 feet. And if somebody said, well, why don't you get right up to the edge? You'd be like, yeah, I don't have, you ever had that feeling? Like I do have some sort of fear of heights. I wouldn't say it's catastrophic, but when I go on a balcony, my knees get a little weak sometimes as I get closer to the rail. Like
Yeah.
I can, like my body goes, whoa. And so it's the same thing here. You're just establishing where the edge is and how close do you want to go to the edge? The edge here is probably 80% loan to value. Do I think we could recoup our money on a sale of a property worth 443,000 being in it for 80%? I do. But that doesn't mean I want to be at that edge. I'd rather be at 75. And so here we decided 75. We were comfortable at 75. And all of a sudden we get this surprise. And so we put the onus on the borrower. And the borrower came up with the money, which was
Amazing.
brilliant. So the borrower comes up with the money, and I'll turn this over to Jeff because he's our lead administrator, and he can walk you through the next two slides, essentially how it performed, which in a nutshell, brilliant.
Chris, it was brilliant. I got a quick question for you though, based on the last slide. How many times do surprises come up? Like,
All the time.
is this a regular occurrence?
All
Like,
the time. And you know what? And you have to I'm so glad you asked this question because you have to like, it would be easy, and I know you know this because you've heard me talk about it so many times in different um, venues and whatnot. But you have to take borrower behavior with a grain of salt. It would be easy to just go, "Oh, this guy's a liar," and throw up the flag and kill the deal. He's not. I don't think borrowers in general are trying to deceive us, but I do think that there is a question in their mind. What do they know? What don't they know? What do they need to know? What do they not need to know? Some people just don't want to tell you everything. They're hoping that maybe they won't have to share because they're embarrassed or whatnot. And they don't realize that actually it's better to tell us the whole picture and let us gnaw on it and try to come up with a solution. I mean, look, there's either a solution that works or there isn't, and I think I said this in a prior video. It's that analogy of something's wrong with your body, but you don't tell the doctor all the symptoms because you don't really want to know. You're afraid, right? You're afraid of what the diagnosis might be if you tell them about this symptom. And it's not like you actually believe that if you don't tell them the symptom, it'll go away. It's just, emotion. It's fear or it's embarrassment or any of those things that I think prevent people from telling us the whole picture. But that's why we take the approach that we do. Verify everything. We don't call anybody a liar ever. We take what's given to us, and then it's up to us to ask questions. Hey, so, okay, I saw this on your application. Can you provide documentation to support that? Or, I noticed this and then I read this, and those two didn't make sense for me. Can you explain? So this is the process of due diligence. And this is where I think we do so well is that we take the time. We know going in, it's like, okay, you're going to put an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours into this each time, knowing that at the end, you're probably going to run into a dead end 8 out of 10 times. It's going to be like, oh, did all that work. And there it is. There's the landmine, but you should be happy that you found it. Like you should be happy you found it. And then sometimes this happens, and it's more common than you think that we uncover something that wasn't disclosed in the application. And it's usually not the broker's fault. It's usually that either they didn't ask enough questions of their client or the client just didn't, put it down on paper or whatnot. So it happens. But we don't judge the borrower. We don't know them. We don't judge them. We work with the information we're given and we adjust based on how the information changes. So in this case, when the information changed, we had a choice. Do we increase the loan amount or do we put it back on the borrower and say, we're willing to lend you 332. You need 350. You got to come up with the other 18. And they did. And look what happened.
I think I was worried probably going into this file, especially the last slide when they had over 15 grand in unpaid interest. They weren't paying essentially their last mortgage. And then here you go. You did all your work here, and this borrower was absolutely fantastic. He made every payment on time. There was no NSF throughout the entire term of the loan, and he ended up selling his house in 10 months.
Here's a good question.
Mhm.
Someone watching this is going to go, oh, you guys got lucky. Oh, you guys got so lucky. Look what Jeff just said. He's like, the the property taxes weren't getting paid, the mortgage wasn't getting paid before him, and then you guys give him a new mortgage. What's wrong with you guys? You guys just got lucky. Now, why would you vehemently disagree that we did not just get lucky? Why was he able to make these payments on time the whole time?
We put a structure in place to to better to better his life, essentially, right? So everything was wrapped up. We took away all the unsecured debt, the CRA arrears. It was all wrapped up into one simple clean payment of 26, 28, 33 a month. And he was able to
That's
make
right.
that. It was perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he goes from everywhere he turns, something's behind or something's,
Mhm.
upside down, right? He's behind on this, he's behind on that, to all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't have that credit card payment anymore. I don't have that property tax payment anymore. I don't have that CRA payment anymore. All I have to do is pay my mortgage. I get to keep my house. That's a pretty strong motivator. If you think about it, so you've cleaned up the whole picture. Think of the stress,
Oh, that's I was
right?
going to say the stress of that whole thing over your head. Wow.
Yeah. So it's simple cash flow. It's just like,
Is that what it
sometimes
is?
we
Is that
yeah,
what it is?
sometimes we do a deal, Nick, where like I'll give you a good example. Earlier this week, I was working on a transaction that we ended up declining because there wasn't enough money to pay an $11,000 car loan that ended up being the difference in the deal. And you think, car loan, how could a car loan be the difference? Well, it's because the car loan was causing a $600 a month payment, and when you have that car loan payment along with the mortgage payment and so on, I could tell the cash flow just wouldn't support it. But if there was enough money when I was trying to structure it, I was like, if there's enough money to pay out that car loan and the guy doesn't have to make that $600 payment every month, everything will work. So sometimes it's reorganizing, restructuring. There's enough money to do a certain amount of things. And let's be honest, the collateral is really powerful, right? Like when someone has a charge on your house, it's the first thing that gets paid. So people will let their credit cards go, their property taxes go, their income taxes go, everything. They'll pay the mortgage in most cases. So, you have that as an advantage. But I don't think we got lucky here at all. I think cleaning up the whole thing and doing the math that we did and looking at it and saying, okay, if we were betting on something, it was that the $80,000 a year that was coming self-employed was actually real. And we believed it was. We were able to see bank statements to demonstrate that there was enough money coming in to justify that amount of income, and it was going to be enough to service everything. So if you just think about it, 26, 28, 33 a month, the guy was bringing home about 6,000, 5,500, I think, to $6,000 a month. So you're right inside what the banks would use as debt ratios servicing for a mortgage. He's about 30%. 30, 32, 34%. And so that's manageable. It's been shown, statistically that's manageable. And it was in this case. And then we end up with this track record. Look at this. 10
So
straight months, and not just 10 straight months. He did the right thing. He sold his house. He didn't refinance. He realized along the way, I'm sure what happened is along the way, he was like, I'm all cleaned up. I don't have property tax problems. I don't have income tax problems. I have some equity in my house. I'd rather just sell and start again rather than trying to refinance and keep going down this path. So he did, sold the house.
because this is like such a contrast in best behavior versus the first slide. So would you say it's as simple as I'm keeping my house, more breathing room thanks to cash flow, and clearer headspace because all that other stuff is not piling up anymore? That's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that's probably what happened in the first few months, and then I think he probably had some time to think and had some clarity and thought, maybe I'm not in the right position to be a homeowner right now. I'm paying $2,600. I might not be able to refinance. Then I'd need another private mortgage. I'm paying $2,600, and in Thunder Bay, do you think you could find something for rent a lot cheaper than $2,600 a month? Probably.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we don't get the luxury of getting to interview the borrower afterwards to say, "How did this all work out for you? Was it great?" Like, but the indicators are that that's what happened. Initially the plan was to refinance. Why didn't he? Well, probably because he got really comfortable with having a clean slate and was like, I don't want to go back there. If I sell the house, I get 100 grand of equity
And
back
better
in
credit,
my pocket.
I can only imagine, Chris.
My credit is good. I
Yeah,
don't have, he only had one credit card. Like,
yeah.
to me, this person, by way of a private mortgage that cleaned everything up for him, feels like they had a moment of clarity, and we're like, you know what? I'm gonna take an easier path. I'm not gonna strain myself anymore. Good on them.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's try the next one. So here's the outcome, Jeff.
Yeah. 100% principal returned over 10 months. Total interest was just over $26,000. As you can see on the right-hand side, we had investors from as little as $50,000 into this loan to $157,000. So this was a great success, from especially from looking at the previous slides and everything that this borrower had to go through. All the investors came out 100% clean, and it was an amazing loan file. Really
Were any
was.
of
Yeah.
the investors, raising concerns when presented with the file initially?
That's a great question.
They typically don't, because they know that if they're seeing an opportunity from us, it's because there's a plan in place
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, when you have a first time investor with us, we typically have to walk through the entire solution, exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and so on. But over time, right? Don't forget, investors are only seeing the 1 or 2 out of 10 that we approved, and they get to know, they start to all look the same. Their experience, with us, the track record
Mhm.
they have a smooth experience with one, we trust the next one. And we do a lot of this type of, education, right? Transparency. We have the magnetic forum. We show people exactly what we do and what our logic is and how we assess things. There's no guarantee that we get it right every time. There's always the option that the possibility that things go wrong and that the collateral isn't strong enough and that we make a mistake on valuation or any of those risks. That's why, I mean, it's an investment, right? There is risk, but I think we do a great job of mitigating risk, at an elite level, and that's why we have the track record we do, and so it builds trust. But to answer your question directly, no, none of these investors voiced specific concerns about the trouble, because all the trouble was being dealt with. We weren't leaving things on the table. And I can tell you from conversations with investors who work with other administrators and whatnot, a lot of times, um, when you sort of sign on to be an investor with other outfits, all you get is, like, they don't do the underwriting for you. They just say, hey, you know, this person has applied for a mortgage, and you'd get slide one, and they'd say, what do you think? Do you want to do something? I think what I'm talking about. Like, it's the, what we do before before you even see it. There's so much done, due diligence wise, that when we're bringing it to you, we're only bringing you the ones, we're filtering out all the ones that didn't make it. We're only showing you, something that looks tidy and packaged, because it's been thought through and there's actually a viable plan in place.
Can you speak to the investor profile? And because this is paid out every month, right? So I guess some investors use it as income. Some of them use it to grow their portfolio. Some of them want it as yield only. Um, can you speak to the investor profile?
Jeff?
Well, I can tell you, we pull mortgage payments on the first of every month. They're all paid on the 15th of every month. Some investors would, and I don't know the actual breakdown of this file, but I'm sure that we had a few of them that were cash investors, and a few of them would have used registered funds. Don't know what the breakdown was for this file, but yeah. So some of them, it just goes right into their registered funds account, and others are paid on a monthly basis on the 15th. They'll just get cash right into their account. Does
Oh,
that answer it?
yep. Nice.
Yep.
From a general perspective, the investor profile, what's nice about the way we do things, and it is the hardest way to do it, syndication,
Hmm.
piecing different orders together allows us to stay in the mortgage space. And in the mortgage space, there are very few restrictions on investors. So you can participate with a small amount, you can participate with a large amount, you can break a large amount into multiple pieces. You have a lot of flexibility. So it attracts all types of investors: corporate money, cash, savings, registered funds, so RSPs, TFSAs, you name it. It's very flexible. So we get all kinds. But the way the business is set up is obviously that you can place an order with any amount of money. We do have a minimum of 50,000, but above that, increments of $500, any amount, and we can usually fill your order.
Good.
Yep. Okay, so last but not least on this one, what do we learn from it? Well, first and foremost, you should take away from this that surprises can happen at any point in the process, right? And you should expect them. You are doing things in a systematic way. You are moving things along, verifying things at every stage. But there can be surprises at any time. That's number one. Number two, the lesson here is that surprises don't mean full stop. They don't mean walk away. Um, I think a lot of people would have looked at this and said, when you got the mortgage statement and it was $29,000 higher, it would have been a really easy way to just say, oh, well, forget it then. The guy lied to us, and walk away. Others would have said, well, that's okay. We had some buffer room there from 75 to 80, and we could go to 80. I think a lot of people would not have thought of what we actually did, which is hold firm to our number and force the borrower to deal with the surprise themselves, right? So the surprise caused a shortfall. That's your problem now. You've got to show resourcefulness. You got to take a step here and meet us at the number we're still comfortable with. That to me is the lesson here: is that there is a middle ground. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We increase the loan amount or we kill the deal. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something different. And in this case, it was. Got to know when to draw your line, right? This is where we're comfortable. And this is the other beautiful thing about this is I talk to brokers all the time about this is we make one offer. Like, we don't do a lot of haggling. We don't do a lot of negotiating with brokers or borrowers, because we assess it given the information that we have, and we say, this is where we're comfortable. This is the structure we're comfortable with, and it's take it or leave it. And if you can find something better for you, that's great. That's your job. This is where we're comfortable. Now, when information changes, then we can adjust. We can make adjustments to where our comfort level is. Sometimes we get an appraisal that comes in much higher than we expected, and now we're comfortable lending a little bit more, and maybe that helps us to clean up something else or make it even more comfortable, or build an interest reserve or something to mitigate another risk. So, I mean, it's one offer and then adjustments based on changes to factual information. Okay. And I guess the bottom line here, though, is we don't expect perfection. We never do. We're always looking at each deal and understanding that there are potential problems, and there may be even problems we don't know about at stage one. But we do expect honesty, we do expect discipline, and we do expect accountability. And all those were put to the test here, right? Honesty, verify everything. We want to make sure you're telling us the accurate truth. Discipline, draw a line in the sand. This is where we're comfortable. We're not comfortable doing anything more than that. And accountability. You surprised us, you fix it. These types of this type of approach is very sound for private lending. And I hope that what people take away from these is that there are a lot of different ways to go about getting to a successful, viable loan that can be presented as a win-win and result in a win-win for both the investor and the borrower. You think about this one, pretty messy at the beginning, but in the end, a really good investment experience for our participating investors. And I think a really good experience for the borrower too. Like, I think this was a good example of a win-win. So that's where we want to be. And I guess unless you guys have any more questions, we can wrap it up.
Happily ever after.
All right. Well, happy lending. We'll talk next time.
Talk next time.